thank you so much for being here and for assisting in this reflection that we will have together on virtue and realism in Gaudiya Vaishnavism. It's quite special for me to present something like this here because I'm used to giving class in philosophy, but not in the context of Radhadesh. And many of you I know my whole life. And so even that is quite weird to have like this. So yeah, it does feel quite special for me. So thank you so much for being here and for sharing your time, your Halloween evening with me. I hope it will not turn into a philosophical horror story. But we have Govinda who suggested he would bring out a chainsaw in case. Anyways. So for people who don't know me, I'm Charlotte and I'm finishing my PhD in philosophy soon. And we have Anjali who's also studying philosophy now, so I don't feel alone. And what I will present today has not really something to do with my research explicitly, but implicitly a lot of things that I do research about will be there, especially around epistemology, so I will use some big words, but I will explain them so you can follow along quite easily. And the idea of this reflection, it's based on basically two books that I will talk about. One is a recent book of Krishna Kshetra Swami around yoga and animal ethics. I had them with me, but you will see. And then another one is by Kojan Bohanik, which is around meta-ethics in Gaudiya Vaishnavism. And so both books are very recent. It's like 2024, 2025. So it's, let's say, an academic perspective that is accessible and that is quite recent in, let's say, Gaudiya Vaishnava studies. And in a way, it's also a very practical reflection, and I hope that will come through, because that's, I think, the essence of why it's probably maybe interesting to consider like virtue and realism together, is this practical element, which is quite personal to me. It's like basically this way of trying to find your place in society, of trying to have not only an internal transformation, let's say through spirituality, but also an external one, and to enact something out in the world. So this presentation will be really about that outside part and less about this inside part, because it will really be about virtue and realism, so it's connected to the outside. So this is like the preliminary of what I would like to share with you today. And so we have a little overview of what I would like to talk about. First, I will explain what I mean by realism, because I say virtue and realism in Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Realism is quite a specific word in philosophy, although it has like a very colloquial understanding as well. But I'll just specify what I mean by it. And then I will talk about a specific form of realism, which is the dominant one in our globalized society, which is called capitalist realism. I'll talk about virtue ethics, all of this briefly, of course. I'm not going to keep you too long. So the third point is about... Thank you. I will talk about virtue ethics, which is the first word of this presentation. I will then present the notion of a value-laden realism, which is a form of realism. Hare Krishna. Haribo. I'm just introducing, so no worry. Thank you for being here. And then we will see whether there's time to develop like this fifth element or not. I'm not sure there will be the time for it, but we will maybe discuss. Yes. Oh, I can take the... Yeah. Who would have thought that? So just so you know the topic, virtue and realism in Gaudiya Vaishnavism, and this will be the point that we will cover. It sounds more scary than it is. It's like less heavy than it sounds when presented here. So, but yeah, I suggest we go on a little reflection together and see how it can make us think about certain ways of enacting out in the world, like how we can transform not only our inside but also our outside reality. Hare Krishna. So before I start this, I thought it might be smart or interesting to have two words explained really simply, because these two words, they will come back throughout the presentation. So they sound a little bit heavy, epistemology and ontology. They are quite straightforward, in the sense that, broadly speaking, we can say that epistemology literally means the science or the study of knowledge. So logos in Greek means science, study, and then we have episteme, which means knowledge. So literally, when I talk about epistemology, and I will use this word again and again, but you can have in mind that it is broadly about a field of knowledge, of how we know what we know, of how we give value to what we know, the ways we make sense of reality, the ways in which we give purpose to certain aspects of reality. So all of this is in the realm of epistemology, and epistemic, which is the adjective of epistemology. Then we have ontology, which is, the same principle. So we have logos, again, which literally means science or study, and ontology is the science or the study of being. So whenever I use the word ontology, it will refer to the dimension of being. So the dimension of the real, the dimension of what we consider, Hare Krishna, what we consider real in the world. I don't know why it keeps on doing this. Okay. Oh, maybe I need to move my... Okay, is that okay for everyone? So how we know what we know, and then how we come to know something about reality. And the two are, of course, interconnected. Knowledge shapes reality, and reality shapes knowing. And we have this relationship between the two, and that is what we will try and understand here as well. So this relationship between epistemology and ontology is a relationship that creates different interactions. And in philosophy, we will say that these interactions can be understood on a spectrum. So we can imagine this as a line of where we will find ourselves according to how much value we give either to epistemology or to ontology, so to the knowing or the being aspect. So according to that, we will either have theories that are more constructivist or theories that are more realist. So on one side, constructivism, as the word says, it is this idea that knowing shapes reality. We construct reality by the epistemological frameworks that we will develop. We will construct certain aspects of reality by our perceptions, by our languages, by our experiences. And on the other side, we have realism. So there, the interaction of epistemology and ontology creates something where we will see the reality as being existing independently of what we construct about it, right? So on one side, it is all about how we construct reality through the knowledge that we build about reality. And on the other side, it's reality that is more dominant, and the knowledge is just an approximation to reality. It's just something that brings us closer to trying to figure out what reality really is, basically. And we're always somewhere on this spectrum. We're always moving on this spectrum. Almost no philosophical position is on one extreme or the other. There are certain ones, but we're always somewhere on this spectrum. So today in this reflection, we will try to find where we are on this spectrum in relation to Gaudiya Vaishnavism and what that means for how we can act on the world, how we can act in relation to ourselves. So it's really a question of the knowing and the being and their interaction and what it will create for us in our action about the world, okay? So this is what I mean by this first component, which is realism, and I will always understand it as a way of engaging with being and knowing as being deeply interconnected. So we will always try to find where we are on this spectrum. So let's try to keep this in mind whenever realism comes up in the presentation. It's about this, like, where are we situated? So we are obviously situated on the side where reality exists independently of us. That it's not just our minds that are creating it. So we are more on that spectrum and less on the spectrum that we can create by our thoughts everything that is existing. So this brings us to the, let's say, the prevailing structure of ontology in our contemporary world, which is called capitalist realism. And it's basically a thought pattern, so it's a way of thinking about the world, but that became so persuasive that it completely infiltrated into how we consider the being of the world. So that means that it completely saturated, in a way, the ontological structure. It's not just a form of knowing about reality, it's a form that completely disguised itself in a way to become a vision of realism. So that means that our basic assumptions about what exists in the world, what is real, how reality is structured, all of this becomes seen through this dominant lens of how we think about what society represents, what our action in society can represent. So this is what's meant by capitalist realism, and it's a thought that's been developed by this thinker, which is called Mark Fisher. And he uses this expression to describe, let's say, the background condition of reality, in which, and he says, it has become now easier to imagine the end of the world than to imagine the end of capitalism. That's why it's a form of realism. It's like invading our imagination about reality. So it's not just in our realm of thinking, it's actually guiding our actions, how we enact certain things out in the world. So it goes beyond an epistemological structure and it becomes an ontological structure. So it becomes a structure of how we will conceive of reality. And it's such a persuasive structure that it will really invade in the way we can even imagine things in the world. We will not be able to broaden our imagination beyond a certain scope. And so it's in this sense that we can say that it is beyond just a view of economy, and it goes really in the realm of how we will perceive reality, how we will treat the resources of the world, how we will have our agriculture. So it's completely saturating in a way. So what counts as realistic is been determined before we can even act in the world. And this is something that Prabhupada made this point that the civilization has become, like our so-called progress has become a huge affair contrived for the gratification of our senses. And we have built entire civilizations around this ever-expanding desires that are mistaking material comfort for genuine happiness. So Prabhupada says that we are all mad after money in order to maintain this empty shell. So what I want to get across here is that this is not just a sense of moral decline. So it's not just a sense of human beings behaving in a wrong way towards reality, but it is ontological confusion, and Prabhupada says it very clearly. We're mistaking the illusion for the reality in a way. And so we can see this in this notion of capitalist realism because it's really narrowing the horizon of what we think of as possible. It's narrowing our worldview. It's not just shaping economy or culture, but it's shaping how we think and how we imagine. And that's what art. We know that this is how society functions, how globalized society is functioning. It's narrowing our scope of action in a way. We are inclined to think and believe in a certain sense. So the idea is that one way of challenging this is to talk about reals, like realities that are not encapsulated in this capitalist realist view. Another way is to broaden our imagination, to make an effort to think beyond the structures that are fixed in a way. And this is not a matter of theory. It's not a matter of critique. It's not just a matter of stating this. It's a matter of practice. It's a matter of enacting something out. And I see, no worries, it's not going to be just about the capitalist perspective. It's just to put it into context as to what the situation is like and how persuasive it is. Even if we have a different vision, even if we have like a spiritual vision, it's still so persuasive that we orient our decisions or our way of enacting something out in the world in a way that follows the side of it. You want to ask a question?
But would it be possible maybe if you move a little bit?
Oh, yes, of course.
So we can read easier if it's not technical.
Yeah, I think it moves because I don't move my, no. Like this, it's okay for the...
For me it's fine, I don't know for, I think for them a little more to the side.
It's very sensitive.
I have another one if you want to try.
Oh, sorry. Okay. What is it? Or maybe it's not well plugged in the...
On the other side. Well, now it's Oops. You can see it.
Yeah, because I don't feel like I'm touching it that strongly.
Read them quickly. We listen to your voice.
Yeah, it's always double. It's just so you do, yeah, anyways. So what was I saying? Yeah, how to deal with this, because it's so persuasive. Even if we have a broader vision than that, we still need to play our part in the world. Basically, we need to be realistic. That's why I called it realism as well. And so the idea is that it's not just about thinking differently, but about acting differently. And that brings us to the idea of having to transform our shared reality through how we transform ourselves in a way. And this brings us to this first word of the presentation, right? Virtue ethics. And so the ethical dimension, so the way we behave good or bad in society, is intimately actually linked to this ontological structure, so to this structure of being and how it's linked with the structure of knowing, and that's quite specific of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. But again, I feel like I give you a lot of little tools to get to where we want to get. But before talking about virtue, I just want to explain what is meant by virtue ethics. And ethics is a very broad field, right? In philosophy, we have a lot of different disciplines about ethics. So we have a lot of different disciplines about how we will consider what is good behavior, what is frowned upon in society. So there is a difference between ethics and morality, for example, but we'll not talk about this. But we have like the ontology, which is one of the prevailing ways of thinking about ethics. And the ontology basically says that what is good and what is bad is just a fixed rule. And you just need to follow that rule, and then you will behave correctly in society. So you could think that a religious perspective, for example, would be more deontological, where you have like a fixed set of rules and you behave in a certain way, you don't do certain things, and then you will automatically develop a virtuous or a good behavior in society. And so what's interesting is in Gaudiya Vaishnavism, it's not really like that. It's more a vision of virtue ethics. So you need to cultivate something in yourself and align yourself with this cultivation. So it's not just about following rules, it's about this cultivation, and we will talk about that. But first, very briefly, when I talk about virtue, this is basically something that has been developed by Aristotle. And Aristotle, he says that virtues are cultivated excellences. So it is something that you cultivate, a disposition that you cultivate over time, that you invest in and that you align yourself with through a certain practice. And it is through that practice that you become more and more attuned to what is actually the good behavior to have in a specific context. So it is through developing these dispositions that you will develop the right behavior, basically. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. It is something that is practiced and developed over time. And so it's linked to a certain dimension of judgment, not following rules specifically, but judging what is appropriate to do in a specific situation. So it's more about seeing well and less about applying specific principles. It's about cultivating this and acting it out again and again over time. So there's this dimension of internalization. We are seeing better and better. And this is always in relation to what we can call the mean, which is the middle. So the virtuous response lies in something equipoised, somewhere where we are in the middle of extremes. And our behavior will be virtuous when we can maintain this middle. So to be courageous, for example, is actually a middle reaction. It's not one extreme or the other. We are developing something that is quite equipoised, and that's quite attuned with what we develop in Gaudiya Vaishnavism as well. So it is something that is linked to a flourishing. So there is an end point to why we do this. So there is a dimension of cultivating this for a reason. And it is something that is at once like deeply personal, because we are cultivating this, but it is also social, because we do this in a context of a shared space where we develop a shared action in society, basically. And so the important features to have in mind is that it is about a development over time. It is relational, it is practice-based, it allows for plurality, because we are many human beings who develop virtuous qualities and moral complexity, but it's because it's not just one rule, you apply it and then you're good. You will have to have that internalized and align yourself with your own internalization of it. And it is directed towards an ultimate good, which is like the idea that you need to develop the reason why you are a human being. And that reason, the way you will develop your virtues is in order to attain, let's say, that reason. And so this is very interesting to develop in relation to Gaudiya Vaishnavism. And in his newest book that I have with me, Krishna Kshetra Swami, he develops this reflection on yoga and animal ethics. It's a book that is available online, so if it's something that you find interesting, it's way beyond this. This is just like one little part of it, but I would highly recommend it. It's Maharaj made it open access. You can just put in the title, and then you will have the whole book for free available online. So I definitely recommend that to you. And in the book, at one point, Maharaj talks about yogic virtue. And he talks about yogic virtue in relation to Gaudiya Vaishnavism and in relation to developing appropriate behavior in relation to animal ethics, in relation to how we can enact something different in the world. And so he will say that just as with Aristotle's virtue ethics, it is about something that you need to develop over time, that you need to internalize, and that you need to make your own. It needs to be intentionally cultivated and deepened through a regular practice. And so in the book, he explores this based on the value that he gives to self-discipline. He says that we need self-discipline in order to develop a virtuous behavior in society. And he bases this self-discipline as both a practice of restraints, of yama, and a practice of observances, niyama, which you are all familiar with. So Maharaj will say that the restraints, they are like roots of a yoga tree, and they nourish the soil for the tree, and just as they nourish the soil for the tree to grow, they nourish our capacity to sustain our ethical growth, to sustain our ethical practice. And by nourishing this, it will allow for fruits where we can take better care of our ecology and animals and our relations to others. And the practices of observances, so the niyamas, they are practices of self-cultivation in a way. So they are practices that are supposed to shape our daily character and that are supposed to shape our pursuit of ethical virtues. So the way in which Maharaj develops this is that then yogic virtues, they are supposed to align ourselves with a sense of self-discipline that is cultivated through these different practices. And he gives one, there are many examples, but I'm just going to give the example of enacting truth, satya, as a yogic virtue. So as we saw, it's like the truthfulness, this one. And Maharaj will say that the principle of enacting out truth is a virtuous principle. And he says that truth in our tradition is intimately related with care. So if we align ourselves with a truthful dimension, we will automatically align ourselves with the way of caring. And he says that you can already see it in the root, right? Like satya comes from the Sanskrit sat, which both means existence, being, reality, but it also means goodness and rightness. So in the word itself, there is an alignment between honoring what is real and then respecting that what is real. So the two are actually together. So within the perspective of truth, we already have the perspective of care. And this is based on a realist ontology. So if you remember like the words that we talked about in the beginning, ontology, this realm of being, and then realist, we are on the far edge on that side. Well, this side for you. So it's an ontology that considers reality as independently in a way of our conception of it. And it is seen as composed of two fundamental principles. And of course, this is something that you all know as well. Purusha and Prakriti, and Purusha is the conscious, subjective, non-material being, and Prakriti is the objective matter, we can say. And so developing this practice of satya is a practice of developing the truth of the relationship between those two dimensions. And developing the truth of the relationship between these two dimensions is essential to enact something out which is virtuous in the world, basically. And so to truly being of others, so we need to be in the correct relationship between these two elements. That means that we need to recognize them as real, that they matter, and the opposite is also true. If we cannot respect this, and if we consider our own desires as being primary, then we are denying, in a way, the reality of other existing beings. And in this case, it's about animal ethics. So we are denying the reality of the existence and the complexity of the existence of animals. And therefore, we ignore their needs. And so truthfulness in this way becomes restraining. We are refusing to dominate in a way, and we are allowing the space for the being of others to appear. And we can take the example, like I said, virtues are always a practice. It's not just a theory. It's always something that you need to enact. You need to not just think that you are truthful, you need to behave in a truthful way. Otherwise, you're not being virtuous. And so we can think of an example that Maharaj develops in the book, which is truth-telling activism. And he sees it, for example, like truth-telling around suffering of animals, around the way animals are treated in globalized society, and that enacting this out makes us aligned with the ontological structure in a way. So it makes us aligned with our understanding of reality. And so it's not something abstract, but it's something that you do through speech and through care and through relation. You practice it. And through this practice, you can develop your own self-realization, but also other realization. That's the point of this virtuous perspective. And there's this quote that is in the book, which is really connecting everything together. So I'll read it. I hope it's okay. I feel like, is it okay for everyone? Yeah? Because yeah, it's hard to judge the faces. I'll just read it. So Maharaj says, the human collective indulgence in untruth in relation to animals as objects for consumption gives pause to marvel at just how deeply implicated in world affliction we humans have allowed ourselves to become. Far from pursuing satya, habituated to untruth from the perspective of classical yoga theory, we become alienated from ourselves as we become alienated from our environment, yielding a constricted, impoverished, and even crude sense of self, clamoring for justice and human dignity while ignoring the cries of the countless animals we eat. And so I really want to emphasize on this world affliction. So Maharaj says how humans are deeply implicated in world affliction. That means that we participate in creating reality. That's why I've been hammering on this ontology. We're actually participating in reality. We're not just building knowledge about this. We are implicated, and in this case, we are implicated through a process of untruth. We are affecting the world. And what's interesting here is then to see how this enactment in the world then makes us who we are, and vice versa. So what is enacted out then creates how we perceive ourselves. So it's like a round relationship. And this is why there's such an emphasis that I want to try and bring forth on virtues, so that we can be and enact out something more just in the world, our surroundings, our relationships with others. And I guess what I'm getting at is this idea that through developing these virtues, through developing these dispositions, we are actually inscribing value in the world. And this has an effect on reality, that is, on the ontological structure of the world. So when we engage in this type of ethical engagement, we're not just making individual moral choices for our own advancement, but we're actually inscribing value into the world. We're actually taking part into what we want reality to represent. And so in that sense, we can say that the actical practice becomes a form of enactment. It redefines what is considered real, what is valuable, and what is possible. So in the beginning, when I was talking about this view of capitalist realism, I said that we are limiting our realm of what is imaginable, what is thinkable. And so here we are trying to affect this. We are trying to engage in a different way so that we can inscribe something different, something less unjust, and reintroduce a sense of value into reality. And so in that sense, we are affecting reality. And that brings us, I think, to the last point that I want to make here is that through that behavior, we can conceive of reality in a different way. It's not yet. And this is a vision which is called value-laden realism. And it's developed actually in this book, which is Bhakti Ethics, Emotions and Love in Gaudiya Vaishnavism Meta-Ethics. It's a book by Kojan Bohanek, whose initiated name is Kishore Sham. And he's a researcher, a professor in philosophy, Jain studies, and Sanskrit, I believe, in California. And Kishore Sham Prabhu, he develops this idea, like what I was saying, that by acting virtuous, we are enacting value in the world, right? I was explaining this. The idea here is that we're not just adding value to a neutral world, we are actually aligning ourselves with the value that is true of the world. So that means that we are actually aligning ourselves with the ontological structure, the structure of reality itself. So let's try to understand this a little bit. When we talked about capitalist realism, there's actually this component of supposed value neutrality in a way. We consider that view of reality as being value neutral, as something just neutral. And originally, value neutrality was an epistemological quality. It's a quality of knowing. So in scientific methods, for example, we like value neutrality because it allows for a sense of universality, it allows for a sense of something less judgmental. So value neutrality can be practical when it's applied to the realm of knowing. The thing is that it got infiltrated, let's say, in the realm of ontology. So in a way, our methods about knowing the world came to affect the world in such a way that we conceive of reality as being something value neutral, that there is no inherent value into reality. So that means that over time it became an assumption about reality. And that's a widespread assumption that there's no inherent value or purpose or meaning to reality other than that which is constructed by human beings. So we add it on to reality, but it's not something that is part of reality. We stripped it of its intrinsic meaning, basically, and we just conceive of it as something neutral. Now, what I try to develop here is that when we develop this kind of virtue ethics that Krishna Kshetra Swami talks about it, we are not just inscribing value, we are actually aligning ourselves with the real value that is already there, but that has been neutralized in a way. And we are challenging then reality. We are having an action that is not just a creation of knowledge, but that is a creation of reality in a way. We are enacting something out. And the word enacting is quite interesting because in our philosophy we hear lila so much, right? So it's always this idea of enacting something out. So this is here as well about there being a value void in the world. So there is basically a big hole of valuelessness. And this value void is just filled with visions of realism. And the one I talked about, capitalist realism, is just one of them. And it's the dominant one, it's the prevailing one. But this void, it's in fact linked to something that is quite persuasive in Western thought. And this is this strong fact-value divide, is we divide the facts from the value. And so value is not part of reality, and facts is part of reality. Values are just part of the construction, and the facts are part of reality. And the values are just like human, emotional, social, cultural add-on. They are not, inherent in it. So this has big implications, the fact that we have this divide so strongly, because that means that what is in the world, so the facts of the world, they do not imply the ought. So the is does not imply what you have to do. That means the ontology does not imply the ethics. So the virtue does not imply the real, basically. That's the implication of having this divide. There is nothing inherent in reality that makes us behave in a certain way. And this has big consequences because we end up with knowledge systems that are indifferent to ethics or that are indifferent to the world. So we value progress for the sake of progress, discovery for the sake of discovery. And in the book, Kishore Shamprabhu, he links this as the primary source of the ecological effects that we can see in the world today. It is this divide that we don't perceive an inherent value that makes us act in a certain way. And for him, Gaudiya Vaishnavism proposes a different vision and a worldview where value is not a construct, but value is inherent to reality. It is part of it. And if we act in alignment with that value by developing this sense of virtue, ethics, that we just spoke about, we are not just being ethical, but we are participating in reality more truthfully. And this is what we can call affective realism, because we are affecting reality in a way. And in contrast to what this fact-value divide brings forth, here we can say that the ethical qualities are objectively real. So the qualities of compassion, love, longing, all of these qualities that are developed in Gaudiya Vaishnavism are seen as real qualities. They are not seen as add-ons to reality, and they are conceived as even more real than what we can perceive as reality. So that means that the ought, so what you should do, is inherent in the is. So that means the ethical is ontological. The ethical brings about being. The ethical brings about reality. What is real already carries an ethical weight. So what a soul is, as Kishore Shamprabhu says, what a soul is and what God is cannot be understood apart from a relation and ethical orientation. And so to exist is already to be called into relationship, to be called into care. And so to live ethically in this framework is not a matter of moral choice. It is a matter of aligning ourselves with this reality and of affecting reality in this way, of broadening the imagination that has been narrowed, as I discussed at the beginning of this presentation. And so Kishore Shamprabhu develops this by saying that we have a convergence of the ontic and the epistemic. So when we had that line in the beginning, that spectrum, where I say you always need to position yourself on one end or the other, here they come together, and they come together in our behavior. So they come together in the way that you enact something out in the world. And so ethics is then ultimately the result of this connection between what we can know and what we can see as reality. And it's something that allows us to inscribe this value into reality and to have at the same time a way of knowing, a way of being, and a way of enacting reality. And this is what is meant by virtue and realism in Gaudiya Vaishnavism. We have this idea that reality itself is value-laden. So to exist is already to be in a relationship. This is something by which we can challenge this prevailing ontological vision of the world, because we already enact out an intrinsic meaning. And virtue is an ontological participation. So by developing this sense of virtue internally, by aligning ourselves with that, we are participating in reality more justly. So it's a way of aligning with that which is most real. So when we cultivate these virtues, we are inscribing value in the world, basically. So it's not something that is abstract. It requires this communal and sustained practices, these everyday practices that can bring about a different perspective of how we treat the world and its resources and our relationships with other beings, with animals, with the way we consume, the way we produce our vegetables, so all of this, because it's a way of enacting something different out. So all of these are connected in a way. And this requires an everyday practice, as we saw. It requires something that you do again and again, individually, but primarily in a setting of community. And yeah, I don't know if I stop here, or we can just say that this is something that goes beyond your individual behavior. It is something that can actually orient also the way that we consider communities, including, well, mainly our own communities, because, and this is again something that Krishna Kshetra Swami develops, we can develop this as seeing the communities as what he calls anticipatory communities. So it's the idea that as a whole, you anticipate certain problems that come from these relationships that we have with others and with ecology and with animals, and that by anticipating and adapting on this, on these emerging ecological realities, we can basically form an alternative perspective or broaden the imagination in a way. And this allows to have a vision of an alternative future that is practiced and that then makes ethical framework in a lived sense and in a sustained sense. Yeah, I think I will leave it here to not become a Halloween horror story by being too heavy. I hope it was okay. I don't know, because it's. I think it is something that demands some theory in a way, and it's also difficult to see how it can be brought. So for me, it's like the first time that I'm doing that, and I don't know. It's a bit.
It makes complete sense, because it's, and I really like how you put that Vaishnavism actually does bring the two together. Because in yoga retreats, when you talk to people, you talk about vegetarianism, they react like, yes, they know that it's bad to kill animals. They know that it's bad. Oh, but their what you call a capitalist reality is that it makes them happy, and that's what the reality is you have to be happy, you have you invest in your material well-being and your happiness, and so that's what their reality is, and they can't put the two together. Whereas true with Vaishnavism, that what you've learned and what you do are very much attached. So is that, did I get it?
Exactly. Exactly, and it's not just that you are doing a good behavior for you. So it's not just that you individually, your soul is evolving because you're doing a good behavior. It's the good behavior comes from the fact that you're aligning yourself with that which exceeds you in a way. And by aligning yourself, you're growing in the way that you're supposed to grow. So that's, I think, the richness of this vision that we have, is that everything comes together. So it's not just an individualistic development of wanting to be morally superior, which is something that you hear a lot, especially around animal, veganism and all of this. And so here it's more the perspective of aligning yourself with the, and acting that out. So yeah.
And I guess with Gaudiya Vaishnavism, you also have the act of service. So it's not just you growing as a yogi and you're attaining siddhic powers, but it's also about how you impact the reality of others. So
yeah.
That's nice. Thank you.
I always thought that in the yamas and niyamas, the satya, it was the animal welfare was more linked to ahimsa.
Yes.
So it's the first time that I heard
Yes.
this, how do you say, this angle of.
Yes.
But when it comes, when it comes to animal welfare, would you also categorize not drinking milk from the cows, which are, like, for example, if we see videos of how the cows are treated, is practically identical to eating meat, or even worse sometimes. Mm-hmm. So would you put that into the same category, or?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, about the ahimsa part, it is developed in the book. So all of them are there. I didn't take the example of ahimsa because it seemed the most straightforward one. But it's also interesting because it's the one that's least represented in Gaudiya Vaishnavism. We don't talk about ahimsa that much. And so when Maharaj develops that, he reads into it quite a lot. So that's quite interesting if you want to take a look at it. But that is the primary one. So definitely ahimsa is the primary one. I just thought it might be more interesting to see how satya is related to it. And then your second part of the question is
yes, about, because devotees very often we don't eat meat and this and that, but then we drink milk, which is how do you say, fruit of a lot of violence, sometimes even more than meat. So, and some devotees, they give the justification, but when you offer the milk to Krishna, the cows are liberated and everything like that. So I'm just wondering, what is your vision, or this devotee's vision on that? Because it's included into the violence, right?
Yes. Well, their vision is veganist vision. Okay. So, Krishna Kshetra Swami has a very nice appendix at the end. Mangala read it also. Very nice, very personal. So he basically explains what he does. And so he is, how does he call it? Like ahimsa vegan? Or like something like that. So he basically takes products of cow only when they are from, protected sources. And Kishore Shamprabhu, he's a vegan advocate, so he's very strongly on that. And so in both perspectives, it is seen as part of the culture of treating animals in a way that ultimately leads to a lot of suffering and their killing. So in both perspectives, it is considered to the same level as the meat eating. But both are quite cautious with making that point because of the reasons that you say, and also because of the status of the cow and the milk products and the place that they have in deity worship and all of this. So all of this is taken into consideration. And Kishore Shamprabhu is very much critical of this capitalist realist framework. And so he says that in that framework, we cannot produce these products in virtuous way, basically. So, yes.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your patience with us trying to grasp every, every word that you were trying to present to us. We're not used to the language list personally. I was hoping for some practical example, but actually it became very clear as you were speaking about the point of, especially Prabhupada saying that how, in the world something is considered normal, but and real or proper, but actually it's an illusion, right? That was the point. And I'm thinking how that's actually real for so many other aspects of our life, just the fact of how much plastic we consume, a family can consume in a week time, or, how it's just becoming normal that we treat people as something, that we need to kind of use to get to our thing, or, just like small things in life which became normal because the pace of the lifestyle and so on. Mm-hmm. And how actually practice how that looks like, how much endeavor one can put actually in this to become conscious and start acting virtuous in at least daily, if not in every moment. Mm-hmm. So, and it's kind of almost thinking you're going against the grain of the world, putting all this at us, the pace of life and so on. So
yes, and I feel we have like such an odd position, because at the same time there's like a sense of rejection of the material world. So also it can easily imply a sense of non-care in a way, and that manifests in how we consume and how we consume very broadly in what we buy or what we eat and all of this. And I think that's why I had this reflection, because I wondered how that is the case, like why sometimes the external part is considered as less a part of the internal part in a way. So what you enact out in the world is divided from your internal spiritual transformation. And I thought it could be interesting to see how it is not in a way, and how they are linked, because we are taking part in reality and we have to play our part in it. And so I very much, it is a practice of a constant practice and constant evaluation, and that's why it's a framework of not following rules, but it's a framework of internalizing something and practicing it again and again and again, and it's that practice that will ultimately guide the right action and the right enactment into the world. And that's why I said at one point it's very plural, because it's very individual, very personal, and we are all at different levels of enactment. But it's this idea of following the same commitments to something and then enacting that out in the circumstances and in the growth in which we are at that moment. And that implies the way we treat the world, it implies the way we treat others around us, animals, the way we eat, the way we consume, the way we treat plastic. All of this is implicated in this aligning ourselves with something that is more true.
I like very much what you were saying about you change your inner action, that it also affects the outer. Mm-hmm. Because we also learn that chanting Hare Krishna, even you do that for yourself, your japa, but it cleans the atmosphere around you, but it clears the world view. So even though we might not be directly preaching this, but because we are internalizing it, so that gives an effect, and it does affect the world. Like, I mean, even just vegetarianism wasn't heard of not so long ago. And somehow or other, all these virtues are starting to become respected because some people are internalizing it and practicing it, and then it affects the whole atmosphere, which is it's nice to realize that. So it's internalizing is not just a selfish thing, because you will practice according to your inner conviction, and then from there you affect the world.
Yes,
It's
exactly.
quite impressive.
Exactly, and that's the true way of affecting the world. Otherwise, it's just following something that is imposed or something that you think you should do, but it's only through this development that is internal and that then gets enacted out, that both are, that's like this quote of world affliction. You are like affecting the world by your behavior or your non-behavior, because in this case it's untruth, so it's even your non-behavior, but by that you are affecting the world as well. And I very much like also the way Prabhupada says that a Vaishnava is a gentleman, which is like this in a way. It's this responsibility by behaving internally and externally in a certain way that transforms both in the same process, and that is ultimately more true and more real. Yeah.
I like the point that you were making about how sometimes when we're trying to connect with our real identities as a soul and focus on our Sanatan Dharma, then we neglect maybe our Swadharma, and that we begin to see material things and the way we act in the world, and we kind of push them aside and they're less important. And that's how, in that sense, the knowledge is actually perverting how we can influence reality. So I don't know, that's just something I've been struggling with. Sometimes the more you read and the more you become sort of attached to investing in your spiritual growth, then sometimes you become rejecting of the reality that you live in, and that
or you only see it, which is exactly why I developed it in this way. You only see it as a capitalist reality, which is explicitly what we know is not the case, but you behave as if you think that the outside world is that. And I see it in myself, and that's why I don't want to behave outside, because I'm like, no, it's just like this and blah, blah, blah. No, you are contributing to that. And by not acting in that world, you're maintaining that. So it's quite funny because there's like this dissonance sometimes, and I have it exactly the same, where you retreat and you think that you can only be authentic or develop what you want to develop in that realm. But I think it is precisely about seeing that how you see the material world is not the reality, but somehow we behave like we think that that is the reality, and we get out of it. And by doing that, we are making it more like that in a way. And I think, for me, that's why I try to make more space to imagine something else as a behavior in that world as well. And I think it's like something that, as we discussed, like it's a practice again and again and again, and a commitment to not thinking that that is the ultimate reality, although we behave like that, even as knowing that it isn't. we retreat from it in with that mood in a way.
I was just wondering, you were participating in the truth. I guess part of it is also propagating the truth to others. You didn't touch on that point, but I think that's an important part of it.
Yes. Yeah, I think what I meant with this truth-telling activism in a way, like you are actively well, here it's in relation to animal consumption, but it's not just you developing that vision for yourself, but it's something, in order for it to be virtuous, it's something that you need to enact. So it's something that you need to share, and you need to commit to it in a not just in an internal way. It needs to have this external dimension. So you are, I completely agree with what you say. Yes.
Also, a small question, if I may still. Some devotees may say Prabhupada never introduced veganism. How would you reply to that?
Yeah, I think it's I think it's a matter of we know how animals are treated in these big farms, and how there is knowledge about this, and that knowledge is something that is affecting millions and millions of animals, is affecting millions and millions of cows, because we know that the dairy industry is the same as I feel like but we know that it is the same industry that produces the meat and that produces the milk, and it might not have been the case in another structure of society, but it is the case in our structure of society. And so if we know that, then there is something that we need to do with that, either consume differently, or it's a very difficult I would suggest to read the appendix on it, because it's very beautiful, also very human and very personal. I think that's what this appendix says. It's a personal decision that makes sense.
Is it possible that when Prabhupada was here, the dairy industry
exactly.
was not like now? It's 50, how many years? More than 50 years. So, and also we were not aware, like for example, he came from Vrindavan, and there was not like now cows eating plastic everywhere and exploited and everything. So someone had a cow, they milk the cow, they give the milk. I remember being a kid and going to the farm to get the milk for my grandma. So maybe he had that idea in mind. He was not aware. Like in 50 years, I think the things are degraded very, very much. So maybe because of that, because I don't know if he was aware of the situation now, if he will say, oh, no problem.
And also Sri Prabhupada had 10 years.
Sorry?
He had an urgency of giving what is the most important in his lifetime. Since he came, he said, any time I can die. So he had to give the main structure. And now, I think it was said on Prabhupada's disappearance day also, Prabhupada said, I give the structure and you fill in the space. So it means that we have to take the responsibility to can develop it further, because Prabhupada couldn't do all this.
Prabhupada was aware of this. I mean, he instructed us to develop farms and to take care of cows, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But then, so we have to build up on that basic instructions. So he would have supported this also, I think.
Maybe social media would have been in one of the 4 regulative principles of Prabhupada. No social media.
Okay. I mean, speaking of the truth, and it's always interesting to note and how Prabhupada dealt to establish what is the highest truth or most encompassing truth that has other truths in it. And we need to relate to them as a partial of a bigger picture. Otherwise, we just construct again another reality. Might not be capitalistic, but might be veganistic, or might be anything else. So that's, I feel like, really, thank you, Srila Prabhupada, for giving that the highest encompassing possibility of participating in truth, in Krishna's truth. And then we are, feel like many others, we could hang up on many other truths, so to say, and be just. Why not?
You know the last page.
Here.
How would you implement that? The last one.
Yeah,
It's very, very interesting.
actually, this is something because I had quite some other
anticipatory
slides about
communities.
that, but I thought let me not. So it's something that we are because there's no common vision on certain self-sufficiency aspects within ISKCON. And so this is something Krishna Kshetra Swami started a research group about a year and a half, something like that ago. And that's the point of that research group, is to have a practical vision that can be implicated in all communities. And yeah, we're developing this under this term anticipatory community, but I didn't explain it at all. And this vision of living labs, so it's the idea that we can try and build a common vision around the perspective of self-sufficiency through little parts in different temples, and then have those little parts transform the community so that it is not a top-down perspective, which might be very complicated because of all the specificities of all the communities, but that it is down up, something through this living, which is called living lab approach.
And you are in that group?
Yes.
So you have an idea how to implement, like, let's say, here.
Yes.
Because it's true that Prabhupada is self-sufficient, his vision is completely sustainable and self-sufficient, but you go to many communities and we are lacking in sustainability and many things. So you have an idea how to implement.
Yeah, so Thibaut is also part of that group, and in Radhadesh, the living lab would be the permaculture garden to begin with, but it is something that we are in the process of developing, and especially practically developing. There will be more on this, I think.
Okay.
Thank
you.
This is a good start.
Yes.
Your presentation.
Because it's so complicated to have a common, even a common perspective on what self-sufficiency means. Just that is already very complicated, and especially because there are communities all over the world, so self-sufficiency means very different things, and we have the circumstances of the existing communities as well. So Radhadesh, for example, it can never be self-sufficient because there is a huge castle. So like you always need to have to build, self-sufficient in the most classical interpretation of it. So you always need to have a vision of it that can be applied to the context in which you find yourself as well, already, where you need so much heating and all of this. And so, that's why there's this idea of having it through little projects in each community, and then have those projects grow and see how it can bring about something more. I feel like it's very much in what Krishna Kshetra Swami wants to develop is to have this common vision and to have it practically there, not just as a theoretical thing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you
Dat moeten we wel iets anders van doen. Dat is wel interessant.
Zolang de Aldi er nog is, dan gaan we er
Ja, en ik denk zo dat ze zegt, toen je iets anders. En mijn vader langs de andere kant, dan zit er nog altijd. Dus je doet eigenlijk ook al zeggen dat nog altijd.
Ja, dat is dat kapitalisme, dat is toch zo.